Tactical Imagination Club. I am so excited to be here with Imagineering episode 2 with Natalyn Bradshaw, who's amazing, who's a really amazing, wonderful, important member of Tactical Imagination Club, has been in Tactical Imagination Club since the tender beginning, which was, I don't know, a year and a half ago or so. Excited to have her, and I'm going to bring her on the screen with me in just a moment. First, I'm going to just do a tiny bit of housekeeping. I am over here on Crowdcast, which is the way that I could record this well with Natalyn and with screen shares of her work. So it's streaming into Facebook Live, and there's even more of a delay than usual in Facebook Live. So Julie DeRosa, who is the Bureau of Tactical Imagination studio wizard, there she is going to be watching the Facebook Live stream for your questions. You are welcome to ask me questions, ask Natalyn questions, ask questions about her work, ask questions about your work, whatever's on your mind and whatever comes up during this episode, ask your questions. Julie will be compiling them, and after Natalyn and I hang out and talk for about 20 minutes, we are going to look at all the questions all at once and start answering. So please don't be shy. Please feel free to answer any questions that you have. And I will now introduce Natalyn. So Natalyn is originally from Atlanta. She lives in Virginia now. She runs Natalyn Bradshaw Creative Studio. She's an artist. She's a singer. She's a creativity facilitator. She coaches women in cultivating creative practices like journaling, art journaling, photography, creative writing. She sells her work. She sells original artwork, and she does commissions for people. She teaches voice lessons and does speaker coaching. And many of you know her because she frequently posts the results of her creative practice in our group. And as anyone can see who's been following Tactical Imagination Club or following her, she has a very exploratory, very alive creative practice, which always seems to be in process, in progress. So all kinds of surprises keep happening when she posts in our group. So I'm really excited to dive in today and learn more about how she does it and why she does it. And I think it'll be really relevant to many of us in the group who are exploring visual storytelling and exploring developing our visual brands in a kind of open way that's based on creative process. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Natalyn on the screen. Natalyn, you have been invited. And she is accepting. And here she is, Natalyn!
Yay! Yay, I'm here. Woohoo!
Welcome.
Thank you.
I am so glad you're here.
I'm so glad you invited me to do this. This is exciting.
Say hi, everyone, in the Tactical Imagination Club. I feel like I have this little machine that does sound effects, and I forgot to bring it today. It's my son's. And I was going to bring it today because it has like canned applause and laughter, and of course it has like farts and burps and things like that too. But we would have used the canned applause just now.
Oh yeah, I need to get one. Totally.
So I think in a minute, we'll show images of your work to everybody. Okay. But before we do that, can you say more about maybe what you've been doing these days in your business and what you've been working on and what's been exciting you and on your mind these days?
Yes. So everything just kind of took a turn. I thought I was going to be recording some holiday carols because for the past 2 years on a live streaming platform, I've done 25 days of carols. And
wow,
people seem to really enjoy it because one of my myriad jobs that I've had in my life is I worked as part of the Dickens Carolers in Atlanta. I did that for a number of years. And so I just thought, oh, I'll go online and I'll live stream and I'll sing 1 or 2 carols a cappella every day until Christmas Day. And so it was really, I wasn't expecting it to be quite as popular but people seem to really enjoy it. And so I thought this year I would make a recording and, put it on Bandcamp and, sell it for like donations or
Mhm.
whatever. Um, I have not done that at all
Mhm.
because I I started drawing every day on October 1st. And I was doing Inktober, and it was my first time doing Inktober, and I started drawing faces, and I was like, I had said at the beginning of 2016 that I was going to start practicing drawing faces more because I hadn't really
Mhm.
been doing it. So fast forward almost a year later, I finally started doing that. And that really got a lot of engagement. It just got really popular. And so I
Mhm.
was like, oh, well, this is cool. So the thing that I was planning on making later on, like toward the beginning of 2018, I've kind of moved that up and it's changed a little bit. So I'm going to be putting together some little notebooks or journals that have some of these different natty ladies on them. And I've just
Mhm.
been focused on that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's where I am right now.
Great. I love this because, I heard a few things in what you were just saying, which was that, and I've noticed this about you before, like it seems like you attack things in those kind of chunks, like this many days of
hmm
live caroling,
hmm
this many days of, taking advantage of things like Inktober.
hmm
Do you often kind of set up creative projects for yourself like that with parameters like that, like a certain period of time and a certain kind of assignment? Or is
Yes,
it a approach?
I've done it for a while. I think the very first one that I did was 2008. No, wait, it was 2009. And so
Mm-hmm.
I started a 365-day project and it was just photography. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm.
really enjoyed it. I've always taken pictures. My dad was a photographer. He was a photographer and a musician and a writer. And so all those things that he loved, I love. So I've always enjoyed doing that. And with the advent of having more platforms to share online, I thought this would be a good way for me to be accountable
Yeah.
because it's easy for me to say, I'm going to do this, and then it just kind of fizzles out. So that was my very first project. It was like, okay, I had a blog. I had been blogging since 2006 and I had a few readers. I had like tens of readers. I didn't have like a giant audience or anything, but I put it out there and I said, okay, well, I'm going to share a photo every single day. And so I
Yeah.
knew that there were people that were going to be looking for that. And that helped me to stay motivated to do it and not
Mm-hmm.
to second guess myself because I
Mm-hmm.
don't really have time to do a bunch of oh, well, that one's awful. Let me try new. Oh, well, that one's awful. No, I don't have time for that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Right.
So that got me into the habit of having these chunks. Now 365 is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a big
It's a
assignment.
lot. So I've only done two of those since
You mean two
2009.
2 years full of
2
those?
years, two solid
Yes.
365
Yes.
projects.
Yes.
The other ones have been 52-week projects. I did a 52-week project in 2014, 2015,
Uh-huh.
and 2016. And then this year I did a 12-month project. And
Mm-hmm.
because I guess I like to punish myself, I'm thinking of maybe doing another 365 in 2018. But it might be a surrounding drawing, and that's very scary.
Yep. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe the fact that I'm scared is just a sign that, hey, jump into this
Mm.
and see
Mhm.
where it takes you. Just see what
Yeah.
you end up doing. So
Right.
maybe.
Like the Inktober thing. It
Yes,
seems
I
to
was
really
not
surprise you.
expecting that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's dive in and start showing everybody some of your images.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, I don't know if you'd feel more comfortable talking about the images that we're looking at, or if I should just keep asking you questions and we'll just show the images so people can kind of absorb them.
Whichever way you would
Can we
like
do
to.
that?
If you'd
Let's
like
do
to ask,
that.
that's
Let's do
fine.
that. Um, because I really want to get more into kind of how your creative process works. But maybe, all right, so let me share your screen. Here we go. And I'm going to make this a full screen.
Oh,
which is nice.
Hey.
Okay, so are you seeing this full screen now?
I can see the image plus you plus me. That's awesome.
Okay, so I think I can make it so we just see the image.
Ooh.
So let me go in here and unfocus the screen. And we're going to go here. Okay, this should do it. Okay, now we'll go back to full screen. Okay, are we seeing us big now? Okay. So maybe actually before I go personal with you, can you talk about how you work with the people you work with around creativity? Like, what does having a creative process or, you know, kind of putting creativity at the center of your life mean to you? What's important about it? Like when you're coaching other people, how do you kind of approach it with them?
Well, I tell people that the main reason I got into the stuff that I do now, there are two main reasons. One was it really was kind of, it was almost like a form of prayer. It really was it was a sanity saver for me because there were a couple of years over the last 10 years that were harder than others. And once I started doing all of this stuff regularly, it just really helped my mental outlook, I would say, like my emotional well-being. But the other thing was I have precious few photos of my parents. I used to have a lot more. I lost a ton of pictures that my father took. So there's a lot of family record that I just don't have anymore. And for a few years, I really lamented that. Like it would make me cry because I was just like, I'll never get those things back. And then I would always kind of make myself feel better by saying, well, you can't take it with you anyway. So yeah. But what I really hated was that I didn't have those pictures of my mom and dad or my grandparents and things anymore. And I was that person that, I mean, and you could even see it a lot in just some of these images. I'm not there. It's me taking pictures of stuff. So I had tons of pictures of my children, tons of pictures of, my husband or things that I was taking pictures of, and I wasn't really in front of the camera much. And that was for reasons, but I realized I want my kids to have pictures of me. I want my kids to have and then it went from not just wanting them to have pictures of me and my grandkids to have pictures of me. I wanted them to understand some of the things that I was into. I know bits and pieces of what my parents were into, much more my dad than my mom, but they didn't really, it was a different generation and they both passed on now, but they didn't really talk to me about, I'm an only child. They didn't talk to me about that kind of stuff. My dad just did things with me so we could experience it together. And my mom and I were just always in close vicinity to each other. So we had a really good relationship, but I didn't know what made them tick, really. I didn't know the things that they were really interested in, especially creatively. And so I thought, I don't want my kids to not, or my grandkids more so than my kids, to not really know, oh yeah, I'm a grandmother. That's my grandparent. And she's old or whatever. And no, I'm a person. I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman. I've had certain experiences that have kind of formed my outlook on things, and I want to express those things so that they know. And at the same time, I want to express things so that they know what brings me joy and what really makes me happy and gets me excited, and things that I might dream for my children. Not that they have to do those things, but just imaginings that I've had in my head. I want them to just know those things. So that's why I write a lot and I take more pictures and I take some creative pictures of myself and I draw and all of that. That's really kind of where it's come. And I think once I share that, when I have shared that with people, that's gotten them really interested in doing that themselves, for themselves. So I think that's where the door opens.
Yeah. Wow. So it's really like, a way of being here, being visible, creating a record and a trail and
Yeah,
you know,
totally
a
creating a
legacy,
trail. Yes,
legacy building.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
Vivian Meyer, um, I remember back in I think it was 2008, when no one really knew about Vivian Meyer yet. The stuff was
Mhm.
just starting to creep out into the surface. And it was like,
Mhm.
oh, Phil Donahue's old nanny. It turns out she took lots of pictures, and
Right.
now it's Vivian Meyer,
Right.
And
Right.
so it's like, oh, you see all of this stuff. But it would have been great if people had known
Mhm.
beforehand, because they could talk to her about it or whatever.
Right.
Frida Kahlo, her journals, she's got all of these things written down, and
Mhm.
you can go back
Mhm.
and read and kind of get a glimpse into like her head and like what's going on there. So I think stuff like that is really fascinating and really important.
Mm.
And I love
Mhm.
it when there are artists that I find discover for myself, not that they haven't been discovered, but find for myself that I
Yeah.
found out that's exactly what they've done.
Mhm. I love what you're saying here because it also speaks to me to, the many, many, many people in our Facebook group who are business makers, who are also creating something that leaves a mark on the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it is our footprint on the world
Yeah.
in the gentle sense, and is, creating something new that never existed before. And that I think for many of us, you know, who are building businesses that we want to have make a positive impact on the world, in some
Mm-hmm.
way, like culturally, socially, spiritually conscious
Right.
businesses. Like that's something we don't talk about a lot that you're speaking to now about, connecting us to our heritage, connecting us to our, our ancestors, our descendants, like,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it in a really creative way through imagery. It can be hard to remember that you're doing that when you're, you know, setting up your marketing funnel or doing your accounting,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though it is all part of like creating this thing that didn't
Mm-hmm.
exist before.
Mm-hmm.
But the visual process that can be in a business for those of us who want to evolve our visual brand ourselves to be involved in that process, it really is kind of an expression of the soul of the
Yeah.
project or the voice of the project, the visual voice,
Yes. I'm so glad you said that too,
Yeah.
because I've said a number of times, and I think I'm going to start saying it in some of my images. What I'm doing right now, I refer to it as creative soul care, because it really is
Mm,
is it's a means of tending to my own soul.
yeah.
I think a lot about, okay, as my soul prospers, I prosper. So how am I going to tend to my soul so that it
Mm,
prospers? And this is it
yes.
for me.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that so much. Soul care. And, as you're building your business, doing the creative coaching and, all the different types of work you do within your business, like to have it grow from that kind of center and that kind of source just is very exciting to me. Like
Yeah.
people tend to really think of like the imagery and the creative process as the thing you do when you have time at the end of your workday.
Right.
And the
Right.
picture you're generating for us is that a building, a business can build and can grow from that foundation.
Yes,
Um,
definitely. I couldn't
yeah.
do it any other way. And so, no, Natalyn Bradshaw Creative Studio, as it is now, didn't start until 2016, the beginning of
Mhm.
2016. And
Okay.
before that, it was called Rosebud Photography. So I was
Hmm.
just doing photo shoots for people. And it was all through word of mouth. And then all of
Yeah.
my voice students were always through word of mouth. So I
Hmm.
never had this large enterprise, because I was never
Mm.
doing any marketing and all that kind of stuff. And so I got caught up in all of the, oh, well, let's make this much in this many weeks or whatever. And it's like, I'm not sure how I could ever even do that, because
Hmm.
the work that I'm doing, not to make it sound like, oh, it's so much more important than like being a virtual assistant. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I
Yeah.
don't have I don't have the bandwidth to create things that have the kind of meaning that I want them to have like that,
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
I'm constantly generating this ginormous amount of income in a matter of days. And once you realize your business just isn't really like that, it's kind of, I took a hit. I was just kind of like, oh, well, I guess I'm not
Yeah.
as successful. Oh, well, that sucks
Mm.
because I'm in my 40s. What am I going to do? It's just like, what's going on? But now I'm
Yeah.
like, no, that just was never what I was meant to be. That's not how I
Mhm.
was meant to operate anyway. That's not how
Yeah.
this was ever meant to operate.
And also, a lot of the business models and examples and kind of training that's out there in the business world is not based on the long cycles and kind of waxing and waning ebb and flow of creative process.
Right.
And so I think that, it can be a slower runway for those of us who are letting the creative process guide.
Mm-hmm.
But it can build to something very lucrative, but the model just has to look really different.
Yes.
It can't
Yeah,
be based on that expectation of like constant productivity,
exactly. I
which
totally
is
agree.
so unsustainable for so many people for so many different reasons.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to guess that people are going to want to see images again. And so I was thinking we'd go through them again and talk about like just how you do it. Like, what do you do when you sit down to make work, and where do your ideas come from, and what are your starting points? And I know you have some journals and some things there.
I
Do you
do.
want to start by showing us what you have?
Yeah, I have a
And
couple
then
of
we can see
things.
slides again. And if anyone's come in and missed the intro, anyone who's watching, we're going to do question and answer starting in 5 to 10 minutes. So put your questions into Facebook Live, into the comments. That's what they're called, comments. And Julie, the wonderful Bureau of Tactical Imagination studio wizard, hello, is compiling them for us because Natalyn and I are in Crowdcast, which is why this looks so good and so high tech. And Julie's compiling all your questions so that we can answer them really efficiently pretty soon. So put your questions in, and just ask anything. Like really, you can ask Natalyn questions about her process. You can ask questions about business, visual storytelling, anything that comes up in response to anything that's happening here. So show us your journals, Natalyn.
Oh, cool.
And here, I'm going to focus your screen so you're bigger here.
Oh,
okay.
Yay. Okay.
Yay.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't know. I know how to do a couple of different live streaming apps, and I know how to flip the screen around. I'm like, I'm not even going to try that here because,
okay.
I'm like, I don't know if it's going to go sideways or what to press. So I'm just going to hold it in front of my head.
Seat of our pants.
We're
it's
so
okay.
technologically advanced here. I'm like, I'm holding it in front of my face.
We are.
So
it's
this
true.
is my current. Ooh, there we go.
There we
This
go.
is my
There
current journal, my current art journal. So I've got some sketchbooks, but this is my art journal. Every year, I go through one or more than one if I run out. But I like using this. It's called a traveler's notebook. It's based off of the Midori Traveler's Notebook, and I have one of those too, but it's downstairs. That's what I used last year. But what I like about this is it's got a number of inserts. This one has two, but once you fill one up, you can take it out and then just put another one in, or you can leave it in and just add another one to like fat for you to deal with, and then you take them out. So I really like using this. And so this is my second year using this kind of art journal. I've used Moleskinas, I've used hardbound sketchbooks. They're all great, but this is really, really good for being able to just switch things out. So I'll share a couple of pages in here. Like I said, I have two inserts in here. One of them is more of a dedicated art journal. I am working on an art journaling project. I'm part of, or two of them. I'm a part of two different communities. And so I get prompts and I work on the prompts in this section. But I'll show you a little bit. This is, these are galaxies, little mini galaxies. And if I keep going that way, yeah, you can see.
Never stop looking. That's great.
Yeah. So I do those kinds of things in this insert. This one is a different, this is what I did for the other community that I'm in. it was another prompt, and I really liked this one. And we're in a season in this particular community. The year is broken up into seasons, and right now we're in the season of connections, and I'm like, that's great because I love talking about connections. So this was more about my connections to my past, my connections to my heritage and the strength of my family members, the resilience, the dreams even that were unrealized, but the hope that was never fully extinguished and was passed on to me. So, and then one more I'll show. This is not a natty lady. I did not do this in October. I did this in September. But at the top it says, make more messy mistakes. And so I put some things on the other side that made me think about, well, what do I believe in as an artist? And this is the kind of stuff that I used to tell my students, because I taught for 10 years as a music teacher at an arts academy. And I would tell my students this: we get really caught up in rules and critiques, I would say. Like, we really criticize ourselves, and we think that the way we are isn't enough, and the way we think and the way we feel about things is wrong or isn't enough. And that stuff comes out in our artwork. It comes out in the things that we do. How does it come out? It comes out in us really not ever doing anything but copying someone else because we don't feel like we have anything of value to offer. And so that's why I put make more messy mistakes, because the mistakes are okay. And then the other side says, be you bravely. We are fearless, independent, and original. And then in my other insert is really more of my long form journaling pages. So one of the things that I love to do, of course, if it wasn't obvious already, is creative journaling. So I'll put some things down on the paper, and then I'll write my journal stuff, like my regular journaling. I have a regular little tiny journal that I pretty much just write in, but I love doing stuff like this where I'm kind of, and a lot of time, and this is a thing this particular journal or type of journal is popular in the planner community, and I love planners. And so one of the terms that's used a lot is decorating. We're decorating our pages, So I tend to decorate my pages before I write on them. And then that's what they end up looking like. So even just the pages where I'm just saying random stuff, or I'm just expressing some different thoughts, or even if it's just kind of stream of consciousness stuff, or even just lists, I want them to look engaging. I want them to look in a way that I go back and I thumb through, and I pause myself, and go back and read over the things. So as far as the sketching the faces, this one is one of my favorites. I have a few favorites. I'm just going to share one though. And the reason it's one of my favorites is because I'm so proud of it because I got kind of extra ambitious in my head as I was starting. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to give her a tattoo. Yeah, I'm going to give her a tattoo all across her chest. Yeah, it's going to be the skyline. It's going to be Brooklyn. I'm like, no, I'm from Atlanta. It's going to be ATL. I'm going to draw the Atlanta skyline. I'm going to draw the view from the Jackson Street Bridge. And I'm like, I've never done that. Like, why, like, but that didn't stop me. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. So I remembered kind of what the view from the Jackson Street Bridge looked like. There are tons of pictures of the Jackson Street Bridge view. So I looked at some and I sketched it out, and it actually does not look horrible. So I was just like, oh my gosh, she's so edgy. She's so cool. She's so fun. Oh my gosh, I love her. And so I gave her like a shaved side of the head and then swept her head over to the other side. And so each one of these faces is supposed to be a representation of me.
Yeah.
I'm not super great with I haven't mixed skin tone the way I'm to where I'm really satisfied with it yet. So they don't all look exactly like me, but they're all supposed to be versions of me.
They're all you.
They're all like, each one is like a layer of my soul, and our soul is infinite, made up of infinite layers. So all the ladies look different. But I just loved her because I'm probably not ever going to get any tattoos because the process scares me. but I like looking at them. I think they look really cool. So I'm like, there we go. And I'm probably never going to shave the side of my head because I'm just probably never, I mean, the most I've ever done is dye my hair different colors, but I think it's really cool. So I'm like, yeah, this is what she's going to look like. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. And then this is my current sketchbook because that one's full. And
Okay.
so I've just been practicing. I just keep
Yeah.
practicing. I just keep practicing.
One
Do a
thing I
little
love
girl.
about about the natties is, you know, we're all trying to figure out how to show up authentically in our business and figure out what is our identity and our persona and how to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be so easy to get like real worried about showing up authentically in the right way.
Yeah.
And the natties, I feel like, are such a great reminder that we contain multitudes and we get to show up 100 different ways and still be ourselves.
We sure
you
do.
know, so I love that exploration that you're doing. It reminds me of selfie explorations. You know, you get to try on different hairstyles and skin colors and clothes and,
Yes.
you know, play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all you, of course, it's all you. So let's share the screen again, and I'll just go through the images one more time. And those of you watching in Tactical Imagination Club, hello. Go ahead and put questions in, because just in a couple minutes we're going to go to question and answer. So really think about, you know, you've got two creativity coaches here with you, and you've got Natalyn in the starring role here to answer questions for you, both about her process or about your own creative process in your business, things you're trying to figure out. You know, ask your curious, nosy questions, ask your nuts and bolts questions, you know, bring your dilemmas. And I will share my screen again with images. Here we go. And I will focus in on this screen. Okay. And it's like a little multi-step process here. So for those of you interested, I just pulled these images off of Instagram, which is a really great place to follow Natalyn. And Natalyn, what's your Instagram handle?
It's NP Bradshaw. N as in Nancy,
NP
P as in
Bradshaw.
Patrick. Yep.
And I tried to get a mixture of things so there are these beautiful digital collages where you've combined your painting and drawing with photography.
Yes.
These are so fascinating to me, and I bet someone's going to ask what apps you use and how you do this. Those kind of go for it, guys. Some of them are like these, where you've collaged together the collages, like you put together, you know, the different kind of images.
Yeah.
And then here are some more of the natty images, which are the daily Inktober self-exploration, identity exploration. So, you know, I feel like we're getting a picture over the course of this conversation of your creative process, that you rely on community constructs like the 365-day thing, the journaling community, the planner community, Inktober, like that, creating and or joining and relying on these kind of community containers for creativity can be a really, really good way to nourish your creative practice. And then, you know, seems like you do a lot of journaling, you do a lot of photography, you do a lot of digital work. And are there parts of your creative practice that are not linked to those kind of assignments and those larger bodies of work? You know, how does the journaling and the digital stuff and the project-based stuff, how do these things all relate to each other? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. The self-portraits in particular, they've never actually been connected to anything. It's really just, I feel like I'm going to take a selfie. And the more selfies I've taken, the more comfortable I've gotten in front of the camera, because there's I could tell you a whole story, like essays worth of information on how I've evolved through just taking selfies, how my sense of identity has evolved, how my own confidence in myself and my own acceptance of myself has evolved. We could get into talks about self-esteem and colorism and beauty standards and all kinds of things. And
Will you come back on the show?
yes, yes, I
Because I
will.
really want to have that conversation with you
I
about
will.
yourself.
So being able to take these selfies has not always been just, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do it. No.
Yeah.
It was definitely a process, and I'm still in process with that because I feel like some people might look at some of these selfies and I'm doing them because I'm trying to do something that's a little bit different and something that's kind of new or whatever. But I know that there are some that have seen some of my self portraits and have been like, "You're hiding." Oh, I can see. And I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't actually trying to hide. Oh, was I trying to hide? Oh, wait, maybe I am still hiding." So there's still a lot for me to unpack personally with these. But none of those are connected to any kind of community. The singing, that's just, I worked as an opera singer and I worked as a jazz singer, and my degree is actually in music. And I worked as a music teacher for years. I started my own enterprise teaching voice lessons when I was a junior in college. So that's just something that I've always done. It's something that I'm never going to not do. So, but that's not part of any community either. I've been part of like the theater community, and as far as all the work that I did and different jobs that I've had, but I didn't feel as connected to those communities as I do to these online communities that I'm a part of, because there's still a lot of, we're all performers, but then you get in these certain circles and there's a lot of performance, so to speak. And as someone who's a recovering performer, as far as that kind of performance goes, it's not really healthy for me to be in that kind of environment. I start feeling just awful. So the singing and the self-portraits are definitely not kind of intertwined with any of the other stuff. And then, yes, it obviously is, because it's all part of a body of work that I'm
Yeah.
wanting to put together and craft and have and eventually house somewhere, in some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I really appreciate about your work, which I also think is really useful for people to notice, is that there's a huge diversity of exploration. I mean, between some of the images on this page in relation to each other and also something like this, there's a lot, there's just a giant range, but still it's clear to us, having gotten to know you and, seen your work over time in Technical Imagination Club, that it's all you.
Yeah.
Like that a brand does not have to be, well, first of all, this is so much more than a brand. I mean, all of us are so much more than a brand, right?
Right.
But that a visual brand does not have to be super limited. It doesn't have to be 5 colors and 1 font and
Exactly.
images that look like this or this.
Yeah.
That when you actually deeply, you go deeply into a creative process that's real for you, your voice starts to come out.
Right.
And your brand is your voice. That's what people recognize over time. And your voice can change and change and change and change. But, this stuff is unmistakably you. And we see it in so many different forms. So yes, it can be important with branding. If you're branding a particular program or this or that, you want recognizability, you want some uniformity. But there's so much more room to explore than many of us feel like there is. And it's so much less limited than we think it is.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, just what you were saying about your brand is your voice. Being someone who's been a singer almost my entire life and someone who's taught other people how to sing, that really is it. Your voice is one thing from top to bottom, and that is your voice. But you've got a high range, you've got a low range, you've got a mid range.
Right.
I don't just sing opera or jazz. I sing gospel. I've sung R&B. I've done, so there are genres. There are all different kinds of ways that you can express your physical voice. So why would it not be true that you would have all kinds of different ways you can express your creative voice in this way, or as the voice of your persona, or your business persona or brand.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And that having a rich creative practice just gives you this foundation, and all of the kind of completed images and the more design stuff you do can kind of grow out of this foundation, and you have this kind of limitless pool of stuff to draw from once you're really moving and going in your own creative process. Well, let's move into answering some questions, because a few have popped up. And I've got a little shadow on me here, a little moment of self-consciousness. And we'll do some question and answer, and see how much time we have. We still have 20 minutes. So Lily Garcia, hey Lily, wants to know, how do you make time and reserve the energy to create? That is such a good question.
So this is something that I actually have helped other women with, because I would get comments like, oh, I love this. Oh, I want to do something like this. Oh, usually the top two objections that I would always get, and I still always get, are, of course, the obvious, oh, well, I'm not creative. I can't do this because I'm not creative. I'm like, well, that's obviously not true. And then the other one is, I don't have time. And so I totally understand that feeling of not having the time. I have 4 children. I homeschool them. I've always been a homeschooler. And I'm a wife, and at some point I was working outside of my home, and even then I was still doing something. I was taking lots of pictures, and I was starting to journal, and starting to art journal, I should say. What I realized was that it came down to really the decision to value myself enough that I would value my time more, because I wasn't really valuing it before. And when you truly value your time, you discover how much time you have. And then if you feel like you still feel like you don't, you make the time. You really do. Like I make the time to spend with my kids. To do fun things with them. You just make the time. Now, if you're someone and you're a single mom and you've got 2 jobs and you literally just don't have the time, there are different things that you can do. You can take 5 minutes right after you wake up. As you're getting ready to brush your teeth, you pull out your voice recorder and you say some things in it. And later on your lunch break, you can write down what you said. And then later on, right before you go to bed, you can take some ink spray and spray it on top of your page, and voila, look, there's an art journal page. It's not something that's got to be super elaborate. And then that's the beginning of you starting to weave these things into your life, instead of feeling like they're activities that you're trying to do. It's not something that it's not an activity that I do. It's the stuff's weaved into my life. So much so to the point where my husband, he knows that the best birthday gift or whatever is going to be some like art supplies, or he got me a new lens for my camera one year, or something like that. My kids are like, they're absorbing these things. And so now they're drawing more. They're doing things on the tablet that I'm like, I don't even know how to do, like the little coloring things. And they're creating. My son is an artist, and that's because it was always part of life. It wasn't, oh, this is what mommy does. It was just normal. And that's how I was brought up too. It was just a normal thing. And so I was never looking at it like, when does my dad have the time to do this? It's like, no, this is just my dad being my dad. He goes to work, but outside of that, this is him. Like, this is what it is. So I think if you feel like you're not in that place yet, give yourself just the little chunks. Give yourself, create the 2 minutes here, the 5 minutes here, to do tiny things, and put those things together until it becomes more like feeling like it's part of your life.
Yeah. I love that example of, say something into a voice recorder in the morning, write it on a piece of paper in the afternoon, spray a little ink on it in the evening, because that just reveals that so much of it really is about process. It isn't about sort of sitting there and just waiting for the lightning bolt of inspiration, thinking about it in terms of a bigger thing. It's like these little mechanisms, like these little tasks that don't feel genius while you're doing them.
Right.
But they're just the kind of like practice. It's just daily practice. And that you connected it to, waking up or brushing your teeth, or, that we can always find little things to do. And that becomes the kind of like, when life is really busy, that's the baseline, at least that's happening. And then 3 months down the line, you have a whole Saturday afternoon to work, and you have 40 pages of writing with ink all of this.
Right.
You have this raw material.
You just look up and there it
you
is.
Start cutting it up and making collage, or you scan it in and put a photo of yourself in it, and suddenly you've got a little body of work developing.
Totally, that's totally it.
So, yeah, because so much of the time it feels like you have to carve this big, like, mental and physical and time space.
Yeah, you don't.
But what you're saying is really just create little mechanisms. And I was thinking that would be such a brilliant guide for you to write, Natalyn. It would be like, 20 different little routines like that.
I should do something like that, yes. Because I've shared some of those snippets on live stream, like on Periscope or whatever. And then I have a whole like 30 video series of literally 1 minute videos of different little tips. But
Brilliant.
I would, it'd be good to write those out and make a little, I don't know, like an e-book or brochure or something.
And sometime in the next 24 hours after we're done with this event, let's put a post up in Tactical Imagination Club with all of your links to things like that.
Oh, totally,
and to resources
yes.
like that. Lily said, I can totally do that to your
See, that's the thing. Great. Once you hear that, like, and like I said, this is something I've helped women with before. Once they hear that, it's almost like the sigh of relief. It's like, oh, wait, I can. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to go to the bathroom anyway. Like, that's... Right, I'm going to be sitting in the car in the parking lot at Target anyway. Right before I get out of the car, I'll do this first, and then it doesn't seem so hard or like a chore.
Yeah, but it takes kind of two decisions, right? It takes the one decision, which is my creative process is worth putting in the center of my life, and remembering that on a daily basis, which can be hard. It's pretty countercultural,
right?
And the other decision is, I just lost it. It's like, my creative process is worth putting at the center of my life. No, I lost the second one. That's all right. We'll go back to questions. Maybe it'll come. And Julie says, that's so inspiring, how to find time and fit it in. Lily's going to head out to find an art journal right after this.
Do it. And if you don't see one that you like, get one get a spiral notebook and start there. Right.
Or napkins or whatever. I remember the other decision is sort of the aha moment. So one is putting it in the center of your life and that matters. The other is this aha moment, which is, it's not about creating an artwork beginning to end. Right. It's just about doing a little process as a practice every day. Yes. That's the big paradigm shift, I think. Yes. We don't really learn that in school,
No.
So Jill wants to know what apps you're using. And she's saying that this is inspiring her to create visual art with her poetry. That's exciting. And that she struggles to handwrite or draw because she doesn't like how it looks ever.
Oh.
And well, let's go there first, and then Eleanor has a question for you too.
Okay. Well,
the apps that you use, and what if you don't like how your stuff looks?
So once I got my first iPhone, which was in '07, I think, I was just like, man, oh man, because I became this app fiend. I had apps for recording music, and I had my photography apps. So I used to use Camera Plus a lot. I used Camera Plus and Snapseed for a number of years. I also used Hipstamatic. That Hipstamatic, as a matter of fact, was the second 365 project that I did. It was all just photos from that app. And they were all in black and white. So it was all of that. So my love for apps it goes back deep. But it's also evolved a little bit. I take a lot of pictures with my poems kind of front and center. I did that for the 100-day project this year, last year, and the year before that. So I've got tons, but I did them a little different. I took my art journal pages and I placed my poem that I'd written on top of that and took a picture of it. As far as doing digital, like putting things together, there have been a number of apps that I've used through the years that kind of blend things. Gosh, I want to say there was one called Blender that I used to use, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I like using Fused. There's an app called Fused, and I really like playing around with that. And you can.
Is that the one you use to fuse your photos and paintings?
You can use that, and that's certainly not the only one. That's not the only one that you do, and that's certainly, I don't use that when I'm doing commission work, but just for my own personal fun stuff, I like using that. And then like for doing color things like color grading and stuff, I think everybody uses ViscoCam. Like I've been using ViscoCam for a good solid 5 years, 7 years. But it's popular because it's really good. And so I like to use that. And those two are the main ones that I use. I've used Over and Fonto both for a number of years now. I stopped using Over because I was just always using Fonto. And just this last year, I started getting back into using Over for putting text on things. And I use Canva, but I actually prefer using one of the other ones even more than I like using Canva. But yeah, those are some of the apps that I like.
Great. And Jill just said she realizes what she's seeing through this is she doesn't need to write or draw. There's so many other ways to do a creative process, which is so true. Eleanor asks, she says, I'm interested that you decorate your journal pages before you write on them. Would you say more about the why? About why, I think is what she's asking.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple explanation. I just like coloring. I just like putting color on pages. I like covering whole pages with just tape. You know, I like collage, but then, if I don't have tape with me or whatever, and if I want to write on top, I just like putting color on things because it's colorful and it's fun to look at. That's literally the only reason.
Yep. I loved your description, like showing us the decorations and calling them decorations and seeing some of the drawings, because, you know, I come from a fine arts background, which is super snobby, where things like that are discredited. And I always love, like, one of my favorite quotes by the dancer, Martha Graham, is that your doodling is a voice that accompanies you throughout your life.
Yes.
That you don't, you know, she said that, and like where I go with that is, you know, it's not a voice that we listen to, but it's so interesting to see like what our hand just wants to do in the margins when we're not thinking.
Yeah.
So, and I saw that one image you showed me, it reminded me of the kind of flowers that I like to draw when I'm not thinking or when I'm on the phone with someone.
Yeah.
And you can build a whole incredible creative practice out of those kinds of impulses.
You totally can.
You know, what happens? Yeah. Like what happens if you take something you doodle with and you just expand on it and expand on it and expand on it?
It becomes
always
a pattern.
Doodle on the same page. It fills out. Yeah.
And I've done that before. And I start off thinking, I'm just, like you said, I'm just fooling around. I'm passing some time. I'm kind of mentally checking out a little bit, zoning out just to relax because it's like overstimulated. And then I look up and it's like, oh wait, this is dope. Like if I had said I was going to do this and had tried, it would not look like this. I used to do it. I did it all the time in college. I remember in Mexico, one of my, I would doodle in my classes because actually doodling helped me hear and focus on the lectures better. And so then one of my host families looked, you know, they saw I was thumbing through something because I was looking for an assignment. I can't even remember, but they were like, oh, and they zeroed in on the drawing. And they were like, can you draw something like that for me? And I understand what you're saying about coming from a fine art background. I used to be a complete music snob. I totally get it. And so at the time, I was looking at that and thinking, oh, that's a doodle. Like, you want me to do that?
Mm.
Oh,
Right.
okay. And so, I mean, I did, and I gave it to them, and they thought that was
Yeah.
fabulous. But I discredited it. I didn't call it. It wasn't art.
Mm.
It wasn't even a
Right.
drawing. You know. And it's just so
Right.
funny how we construct these laws in our head, and we say
Right.
this is what art is and this is what art isn't, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it separates us from our
It
own
does.
like creative
It
processes that
does.
are just most natural for us.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. Any more questions, folks? You seeing any other questions pop up in the group? That's about it. Well, I have another question for you for our last 5 minutes, which is talk to us about how we can work with you. Like, what are you doing now in your business? You know, how can you support members of our group in their own creative practices? Don't forget to talk about the commission work you do or whatever you want us to know about how we can work with you, and also how we can find you. I mean, we'll post your links.
Yeah.
But tell us
Well, cool.
how we can have more.
Yay. I have things. That I can share. That's so awesome. So, and I'm just trying to, because I didn't do this before, which is really strange. Why did I not think of this before? But I'm trying to remember.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it the way the business coaches say.
Yeah. This coming year, I'm going to relaunch a 6-week course that I created last year and ran last year. And it's called Phoenix Rising. And it's 6 weeks. I call it 6 weeks of, what do I call it again? Kind of recovering creative dreams and thoughts and ideas. 6 weeks of rising from creative ashes. That's what I said it was. And like I said earlier on this broadcast, it's a lot of soul work. And so there's a lot of journaling involved, but it's journaling coupled with an art component or a photo component. And so the questions that I ask, they're not just kind of surface questions like, what's your favorite color? That's a great question, but that's not the kind of questions that are in this. So they're a little bit deeper, and it involves 3 live calls, group calls, and the sharing of each other's work and all of that. So I will be relaunching that in 2018, most likely in the winter. So in the first 3 months. I will also be relaunching a 14-day journaling intensive called Return to You. And that is more straight journaling, but the questions also are about the things that bring us joy creatively that maybe we've discounted or hidden away, tucked away, because we felt they weren't important. So those are the 2 course things that I'm definitely going to relaunch, but I'm also going to be putting together some really small, like mini courses just on art journaling. And like simple, fun, let's get together and make this kind of page, and like, a couple of hours, $30, like a masterclass kind of thing. So I'm going to start, I'm kind of preparing like what I want to teach, the different kind of series, and I'll probably offer one every 6 weeks or something like that. As far as physical products, like I said, I am putting some Natty Ladies on some journals. And once I get those up, I'll have them on my website. My website is natalynbradshaw.com. I'm going to be sharing blog posts there whenever I have something new that I'm offering. And then I also have a tiny little email list that I get a little personal on, but not too, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, like, why does she,
I love your emails.
It's not TMI.
I love your emails. They just give us, like, they connect your kind of personal life to the work you're putting out there.
That's really what I wanted to do. And I don't even call them emails. I call them connection pieces. I don't bombard you. They happen every other week. And I'm being accountable to myself by because some days, there've been a couple of times I'm like, I don't even feel like writing an email. I don't even want to say anything. But then it's like, no. So this next one coming up is the 8th one. So I'm just like, yay, I've been consistent. Woo!
That's great.
So I do have that. And yeah, the other physical products that I have available are on my Etsy shop right now. And I am going to be adding some more things this month, new things. But I have some note cards and some little sticker packs, some little photo packs. So you could take the photo and either put it in a small frame, or you can use it in a larger journal as a tip-in, or something. If you have a large planner, you could tip it into that. Just something that you can always look at. I think that's really what I've got going on right now. Oh, I am very, very close to saying, yeah, I'm definitely going to launch a Patreon thing.
Great.
Because I sing and I read my own poems, and I like doing video streams where I'm creating an art journal page so people can join me. So I'm just right now trying to come up with the different kinds of incentives, the things that I would like to offer people in gratitude for supporting me. But once I have that figured out, I will have all of that information in my email list and on my website.
Wonderful. So it sounds like we should get on your email list if we want to make sure we're keeping track of like when your courses are launching next year and when your workshops are happening. You'll be announcing them that way. So after we get off this call, will you hop in the comments in the Tactical Imagination Club and put the link to sign up to your email there?
I certainly will. And you'll get like a little tiny primer, tomato, on creative journaling. I call it creative journaling there because the term art journaling, since the word art is there, it can be a little bit more intimidating and people kind of bristle at that. And I don't want people to bristle at it. So you'll get it's just like a little PDF with 3 different pictures. I also have one mini course that's available, and that one's actually, it's $27, but you don't have to buy that to be on the list. But that's just going to be the first in a series of mini courses.
Great.
They'll be a little bit larger because the videos in that mini course are very short. I'm thinking maybe 5-minute videos for the future ones.
Right. So great. Yay. Well, thank you for coming on and showing us your work and showing us behind the scenes and showing us your creative process. You and I will talk in the next day and put up a post with links to all of your stuff.
Yeah.
Lists of apps you use, things like that. So fun to have you on here.
So
Thank
great.
you, Natalyn.
I love talking about stuff like this. I love talking about myself. No, I just love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yes,
so.
These things.
Yeah,
me too. That's why I'm doing this. And everyone watching the recording, this is happening every Tuesday with a different tactical Imaginarian. One of those words was your idea, I think.
I said Imagineer, and then I thought, oh, I shouldn't say that because I think that's a Disney thing, but I didn't know. I forgot when I said it.
Oh, it is?
Because aren't they called Imagineers? I can't remember.
I don't know.
But I still like it.
I might have named my radio show after a Disney thing. I have to go check it out.
I got small kids. They watch a lot of Disney. I think it was subliminal. It was like, woo! I was like, wait.
Oh boy. I hope I don't have to rebrand this.
I hope not.
Good to know.
So I'm really sorry. Oh my gosh. Right. I didn't mean it.
No, it's great. It's fine. We're making it up as we go.
Yeah. Seat of the pants is a good way to go because you don't allow time for fear to creep in until you know.
Exactly. That's my style. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Natalyn. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks, everyone who's watching the replay. And we will see you next Tuesday with our next amazing guest. All right. Bye everybody.